And just like that, as predicted, Jaron Boots Ennis versus Brian Norman Jr. The unification is off. At some point, y'all gonna learn to listen to Boxing Ego. Now, there's a lot of finger pointing about the unification that could be, that won't be, between Jaron Boots Ennis and Brian Norman Jr. Would have been a good fight, but I don't really believe in would have, coulda, shoulda, woulda. And at the end of the day, it is what it is, but they're not fighting next. This is pretty much already come out and been stated. So let's take a look at it. Boxing reporter Dan Raphael says, breaking, with the Ennis Norman 147-pound unification dead over money, and Ennis's purse bid now scheduled for a garbage mandatory, closing the IBF window for approval of a unification. Norman will instead defend against Derek Quaveus or whatever, November 8th on Keyshawn Davis card, Top Rank, and Carl Moretti tells me. So the fight ain't happening. They missed the opportunity, the window opportunity to navigate and do a unification, and they were far apart on money or not close enough on money. Done. I want to spend some time in this video trying to explain, because again, it's so funny to me. It's literally laughable. I don't really care because I get paid. So you guys can listen to me. You can listen to other content creators. You can listen to other people on the internet. That's on y'all. I get paid the same. But the man who put out the content before this moment and told you, maybe they know a thing about the business of boxing. This is not surprising. I knew the fight wasn't going to happen, and now it becomes a finger-pointing game. And a lot of people, they're not asking the real questions, as far as I'm concerned. Not asking the real questions at all. A lot of finger-pointing. I see a lot of people blaming Brian Norman and saying, this is foolish. Again, you got people who have never cleared 100K in a year, and they're telling somebody else what deal to take, and, you know, you're stupid to not take 1.5 million. But there's, for those who actually care, you know, I'll give my best take on what's going on. I think for starters, a lot of people aren't asking the right questions. They rather talk about the fight not happening and finger point, which I told you this was going to happen. And you're not asking the real questions. My question is, if Eddie Hearn and Turki Al-Sheikh said they're saving boxing and make boxing great again and all of these things, these adages and taglines, why can't you satisfy any of these opponents to get a fight over the line for a talented fighter like Jaron Boots Ennis? Period. They said, this is Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn says, we sent an offer to Mario Barrios. We sent an offer to Stanionis. We sent one to Brian Norman. And none of those fights got over the line and materialized. Now, Boots is going to have probably what I predicted, his mandatory Karen, and I guess leave it to the fans in the comment section to type and be mad. But the real question is, Boots, see, you guys don't want to have accountability. Boots made the decision to leave Showtime, and Steven Espinoza, who he was working closely with, Steven Espinoza still works with Al Heyman, still works with Amazon Prime, and he made the choice to team up with Eddie Hearn. So this will be his second fight. I'll let Eddie Hearn and Jaron Boots Ennis announce their next fight, but this is what I predicted. More money up front, but money is not the only thing. What about a young fighter? He's actually 27, I think now, and you're regressing. The only thing that's progressing is you're making a bit more money per fight than you probably were with Showtime. But as far as your career, none of these fights are bigger or more desired than being on Gervonta Davis's undercard. Like, because at least you were on a big card with Demetrius Andrade and Gervonta Davis. So you were getting prime exposure on a network that had been covering boxing 40 years, or when he fought guys like Roman Villa. To fight, you're literally, if you fight Karen, which is a disgusting, nasty work fight, you've already beat him. You already shut him out. Nobody really wants to see the fight. The first fight was boring. It wasn't Jaron Boots' sharpest, nicest performance. Karen is evasive. It's just like, what does this do for your fighter? We've already watched that. I don't really like seeing rematches unless the rematch is needed. Like Carl Froch versus George Groves. You need that rematch because of the controversy from the first fight, right? There was no controversy with Boots and Karen Chukadazin or whatever his name is, right? So it's just terrible. So Eddie and Turkey are not delivering major fights like they said for Jaron Boots Ennis. So it's at this point where you have to ish or get off the pot. If Boots wants to be a star, maybe he has to consider 154, because your promoter, they're not able to budget and get these fighters on board at welterweight. You say you want to unify, but if your promoter can't get the fight done, then that's not unifying, right? And I'm not with the finger pointing and, oh, he did this and it's your fault and you duck. The end result, like I said, I practice stoicism. Shout out to Marcus Aurelius. Stoicism, you worry about the internal, less about the external, period. I care about end results. You either did or you didn't. It's that simple. It's pass or fail. To get Jaron Boots Ennis, the big names, the names that would take his career to a new level or new heights, it's been a fail. You first fought, you were supposed to fight Cody Crowley, medical exemption, his eye was messed up. That's not Boots' fault, but it's still, that would have been a better fight. And because of an injury, they replaced him with David Avanesian, right? So you already see it's off to a rough spot, because your very first fight with Eddie Hearn, it was an alternate opponent, you know? And I'm not saying they could have controlled it, but that's who you selected, and then the fight didn't go on. So you spent money on resources doing a press conference with Cody Crowley, all for the fight to not happen. Fans never got to see it. It's the end result, right? And instead of replacing with like a Mean Machine, right? Somebody who at least might be, because, you know, Mean Machine dropped Crawford, gave Crawford some issue, hurt Virgil Ortiz. Instead of getting at least a Mean Machine, Eddie Hearn puts him in with a guy that Terrence Crawford easily flatlined as soon as he started to open up, one, maybe two fights before Ennis got to him. And to be honest, I've already stated this in my post-fight. After watching the two fights, Crawford did better versus Avanesian. He did. He didn't get touched really as much. And then as soon as he came on strong, no did he. He just destroyed Avanesian in ring, in round. Not like, oh, he can't continue, he's hurt. So it just wasn't a great fight. It wasn't a great fight to watch like that. And it wasn't an opponent people wanted. Mean Machine would have been way better, just for an example. And then now you keep saying like, oh, we sent all these offers out. No one cares. No one cares. You're not getting these offers done. And to go into it with the money, let's have the conversation. So a lot of people, they're finger pointing, which I predicted, and say, oh man, he should have took it. But you guys don't know what you're talking about. We're talking about, again, people who've never made 100,000 in their own personal life in 1 year. And they're talking about who should take what and whatnot. But I don't think they understand a lot of the parameters. So let's get it in. And Jaron Ennis, Jaron Ennis they were trying to make the fight in Philly because they feel that's the best market, right? And here's the kicker. The deal, they said, was $1.5 million. That's what I heard. Brian Norman's team has already been on record stating that Top Rank was going to hit him over the head, aka tax him 20% off rip. Off the top, Top Rank is getting 20% of Norman's purse. And I'll explain that in a second, but let's run through this math. So with that figure, $1.5 million, and then we look at 20%, that's $300K. So off rip, Top Rank gets that. Bob Arum, he's taking $300K from Brian Norman Jr., right? Bob Arum gonna get his bread. He been in the business. He has a contract with Brian Norman. He's getting $300,000. That's almost $500,000 that Top Rank is getting, and they're not even the lead promoter. This wouldn't even be their card. So basically, they're taxing and getting $300K just because they have a contract with him, right? Period. So some people said the final deal was 1.7. And see, this is where I love it, because I get to flex that knowledge that a lot of people tell you low-hanging fruit, surface area stuff. They're not breaking down boxing. The other number that we heard was 1.7. So I'm just spitballing, going through the numbers that have been reported. They offered Brian Norman $1.7 million, right? Everyone's like, take it. You're stupid to not take it. So I've already told you, Top Rank is getting 20% of the purse without even having to throw the fight and host the fight themselves. So 20% of that is another $40,000. So you're up to almost 400,000, 350 roughly, right? 350K that you owe to your promoter just off rip. So using the same figures, 1.7 million minus, I want to round it up. I think it'll be easier. We'll just say 350K, but 340, whatever, right? Your purse is down to $1.3 million. Taxes, 50%. Divide that by 2. 675 to work with. And this 675, again, a lot of y'all don't understand the business of boxing. So 675, that's not, let's say you need to go to Whole Foods, because you're fighting Boots Ennis. So you're going to Whole Foods to get your nutrition right, or you're paying for a nutritionist. That's going to cost you. So nutrition, food, probably got to get top level sparring partners. You got to pay for your sparring. Your dad is training you and, managing you. So you got managers and your dad training you. They got to get cashed out, like Adrian Clark, Brian Norman Sr., for training and chief seconds and stuff like that. So we're talking about the figure that I just showed after taxes, about 675, and then you got to ration the rest of that money for various things like manager fees, trainer fees, supplies, utility. And like, how some fighters travel, like, let's say they're like, I got to get away from home, too many distractions, so I'm gonna have my camp in Big Bear. So flights, most fighters at this level, they get track suits for the whole team. They get fight night trunks and gloves, so it has the design and color scheme they want. Like, they go to Fight Label or whoever. This is what the common fan doesn't understand. Like, they get haircuts, just whatever the situation. They probably have a videographer or photographer showing them in camp, different things like that. Some of these guys got YouTube channels, so they hire a videographer. These are all expenses. And again, you have 675 to work with after taxes. So you can understand Brian Norman in a unification. He's like, I got one belt. Boots got one belt. We're both kind of on the way up. My fighter is 23. He's 27. Neither one of them have faced Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence level of foe. I got to fight on an ops network, DAZN, when I'm an ESPN top-ranked fighter. I got to deal and contend with possible judging that favors him, commentators that paint a narrative while the fight's going on. Like, it could be a close round. Why would DAZN give props to the visiting fighter in terms of Brian Norman? They'll probably be like, oh, Boots did the most. I gave Boots the round. So you got to deal with that picture being painted in narratives. We see it all the time on DAZN and ESPN, particularly with their commentary. where it's a hometown fighter, right? Then I've already explained to you that's 20% that he got to give to Top Rank to allow him to cross the sides of the street and fight off ESPN because he has a deal. Top Rank, I told you guys this. Top Rank has a deal with ESPN. Their job is to orchestrate fights with their roster or however and provide them for ESPN. That's one of their fighters who's a champion. So for that risk, they need to see something. They have spent money on Brian Norman, making graphics and flyers. They put him in contention or in these positions. We know the WBO is the top ranked belt, right? Everybody says that it's the top ranked belt. So they put you in position. Top Rank, Bob Arum, put you in position for the fight with Santillan, for the title opportunity, right? And made sure you got that. And then you think Eddie Hearn and DAZN are going to reap all the benefits and get to air the DAZN, whatever they did, pay-per-view or regular DAZN, and Top Rank don't get to see a dime from it. That's not how business works. And this is what I told you. So hopefully you guys understand a bit more how this makes sense. It's all business and it's all numbers. So you guys are looking at it from the $1.5, $1.7 million as if the fighter truly gets to take that amount and run with it, and it's cost free. Like Brian Norman, it's not like robbing a bank where you just rob a bank and it's not taxable because it was ill-gotten. You just robbed the bank, went in the vote, and now you came out and scored, $500,000. That's tax-free money. You split it with your crew, and then everybody gets their cut because it was illegal, right? But in the land of legal, that's not how it works. You got things to actually pay for. You have taxes in America, etc. And like I said, you give hometown advantage to Boots and all this type of stuff. You get the home network advantage. It's just stupid. So people, they have these strawman arguments trying to tell me as if I don't know boxing business, like I don't get paid from this for the last 10 plus years, like I'm not the best in the business, and it's not even close. And they're trying to argue these things with me. This is all business. Make the number right, and we would have had a fight. So for me, what's more shocking is that Turkey and Eddie Hearn walk around with, chest puffed out, flexing this money, and then you think people aren't going to want a piece of that, right? You're building this scaffolding for Crawford Madrimov. You got money to get Eminem to do a concert for Crawford Madrimov and stuff like that. You got the UFC sphere. They're responsible for inflating the purses of boxers for the last several years. And then now when people are trying to gouge you or high charge you, you act brand new. And then to me, what's even more sus is it sounds like to get this unification across the line, they were relatively close to the point where you throw, I don't know the number because it's not me, but like you threw another 350K, 500K, 650K to what you already offered, you might have had a deal. So that's kind of suspect. If you got, I know for a fact Eminem costs more than the difference that would get the unification done. That's why I say you got to pay like you weigh. Eminem's booking fee is in the millions. So you have money to waste for that type of stuff and like 5 versus 5. But then now you want to fight somebody else's product that they've branded Top Rank, and you want them to fight against all odds on your network. You got to pay like you weigh. Otherwise, Carl Moretti in the Dan Rayfield tweet, guess what? We putting them on an ESPN card. We building the Keyshawn Davis hometown card, and we going to pay him in accordance. And then some people are like, oh, this is exposure. Man, exposure. Y'all talking this stupid stuff about exposure. Like, I'm BoxingEgo. I don't care about no exposure. Run me my money. Like, imagine somebody say, oh, do this debate with me On my channel, it'll give you exposure. I'm BoxingEgo. I don't need exposure. Run me my money. Exposure ain't paying none of my bills. I got AT&T cell phone. I can't hit up AT&T say, oh, I got some exposure, so I want to apply this exposure to my monthly statement to keep my cell phone on. Both of them, you know, because I got 2 iPhones. I'm BoxingEgo, right? You can't pay nothing with exposure. You go on a dinner date. Tell them you want to pay with some exposure. Bro, I don't care about no exposure. You guys say stupid stuff because you ain't never lived. You ain't never made no type of money. So, of course, you would take the 1.5 million. You don't care if it's a raw deal. You just see a number. And that's how people get got. Listen, for real, if I really want to go in, this fight is not a fight that has really been built. So that's another problem with the boxing game. People are trying to rush these situations. This is not a high in demand fight that fans have been talking about. Sure, if you can make it, get it done. But you got a 23-year-old and 27-year-old who sparred. Neither one of them have a Pacquiao Mayweather style of brand. So that's why a lot of the numbers don't really work out, because Brian Norman, like, I'm 23, I can Top Rank gonna put me on this undercard with Keyshawn Davis, and I'm gonna get a bag, not have to pay them an extra out of contract fee to fight on an opposing network, right? And then it makes more sense. I got judges that are gonna potentially give me a fair shake, commentators give me a fair shake, etc. So this is what's happening. And the bottom line is Eddie Hearn and Turkey, or whoever's involved with Jaron and Anderson, or whatever his name is, Jaron Boots Ennis, they're not getting his fights across the line. So it just becomes a finger pointing game. We've seen this movie before. We've seen it with Demetrius Andrade. Andrade was over there with DAZN, with Eddie Hearn. They were overpaying him, and they had nothing for him. They wouldn't give him Canelo when he was working with DAZN. They wouldn't give him Triple G when he was working with DAZN. They wouldn't give him Billy Joe Saunders when he was working with Eddie Hearn in DAZN. But they were clout chasing a PBC fighter like Jermall Charlo. And they're like, oh, make the fight. Bro, no, you make this in-house fight. Make Boots versus Crawford. That's in-house. Y'all been working with the same people. Make that. I don't care about this Brian Norman. Because, again, if you're not going to pay like you weigh, these aren't the easiest fights to make. That's the point. Because you have different brands, different priorities. For them to link, it has to make sense, and both people have to like the deal. If one person doesn't like the deal and they feel like, hey, this compensation is not a game changer, then the deal is not going to happen. And I keep showing you my boxing knowledge and predicting these moments. Y'all say I don't know what I'm talking about, and then they happen. So I knew this fight was not going to happen. This is the same thing with Eddie Hearn and Devin Haney, or Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Davis. Devin Haney and Shakur calling out Tank Davis, and then the fight never happens because of the business. Like, Devin's not in a position to be the shot caller with Tank. Shakur's not in the position to shot call with Tank. You got to do what Tank say, right? And then as far as Jaron Ennis, they're acting like Jaron is this like maxed out A-side. He's a good fighter. So is Brian Norman. And you could argue reasonably that beating Santillan, who had beaten Alexis Rocha, right, is equal, if not greater, to the best win from Jaron Ennis, which is probably Roman Villa, right? That was a very good, strong performance. And again, if you're not going to, if you need somebody else's fighter, somebody else's product, then you got to pay like you weigh. Make that number right to the point that everybody's comfortable, where the Normans, they're like, all right, now it makes sense. We got to give 20% to TR, Top Rank, regardless. Plus, we'll get this money and da-da-da-da-da. Now it's worth traveling to Philly, fighting a good fighter, fighting on rival networks with biased commentary, etc. That's what this comes down to. And Eddie Hearn, he's doing interviews trying to spin it. But I ask you this. I'll leave you with the ego final thoughts. Shooters shoot. Steph Curry, he just pull up to the logo and dunk. Boom. He just shot. It's over. Right? Shooters shoot. Notice, like with Eddie Hearn, a lot of it, when it comes, especially American fighters, when it comes to making these big fights for American fighters, it's always, man, we tried and we couldn't get it done. That's unacceptable. No one cares. Get the fight done. Like, for example, let me give you guys an example. PBC has Mario Barrios. Notice we don't know what the is going on with Mario Barrios. PBC is not negotiating in the public eye Barrios' next fight. What will happen is they're working on it, and then you're going to wake up, I'm going to wake up, and then we're going to be like, oh, Barrios is fighting Pacquiao or Barrios Stanionis, and then they just drop the news. Eddie Hearn is probably the most famous promoter for negotiating in the public and spilling the beans and telling the number. Why, if you're not trying to set up your patsy and scapegoat and you don't want the blame game, you're really trying to get the deal done, why are you doing interviews revealing the number exactly? Like, because Brian Norman, if you look at earlier, he wasn't really revealing the number, but then Eddie Hearn started revealing the number. Just think about that. Why would you be like, oh, we offered him 1.5, 1.7? Why do you need to tell people that? Why do you need to tell people what it was? Because it's about public perception. This is like a damage control. We can't get the fight done. So as a result, we want the fans to attack Brian Norman and pick sides in the comment section and stuff, because there's several like deals. Like, let's say you were going to buy a car and then you guys couldn't agree on the price for this Mustang, this 50, right? This 5.0 Mustang. No biggie. You go your separate way. That person go their separate way. And you keep searching for the car of your dreams. Period. You don't have to get on the social media, start doing interviews saying, oh, this guy tried to charge me $20,000 for this. It just, the deal didn't work. You move on. But when you're trying to paint a narrative with an agenda, that's when you're going to start telling the numbers, telling what's going. We sent them 3 offers and we sent 1.5 the first time. Why do the fans need to know this? For real, for real. Like, just think about this. I care about the end result. I'm a boxing fan. I'll pay for good product. That Blue Magic, name brand like Pepsi, I guarantee it my dollar. Huh? Right? We want fights. Either you're delivering them or you're not. It doesn't really matter how much. If Brian Norman took this fight for $1.5 million and a pack of Skittles, the fans shouldn't really care. But again, in this new age of boxing, people can't get it done, can't, push the fight over the line and have it materialize. So then they almost lean on the public to debate who is at fault. Same movie, same script, different fight. It's the same thing, bro. And again, look at how PBC operates. You never really see this. You don't know what is Stanionis doing next. We don't know. What is Mario Barrios at welterweight doing next? We don't know. But what we do know, based on PBC's history, is that they're working on it behind the scenes. That's what you're supposed to do. Anybody negotiating with the public and spilling the beans on the numbers and stuff, it's not real. It's very unserious business, because if you're literally trying to negotiate, you don't care what the public thinks. We need a better fight for Boots Ennis than this Karen crap. We're trying to get that done. Point blank, period, at all costs. That's what we're laser focused on. That's the whole purpose of a negotiation. A negotiation is, it could be smooth, but oftentimes they might not be, right? Where I have these demands, they have these demands. and then you find that middle ground. What works for you works for us, to the point where we can get this done. Not like run to the media. For example, look at Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. That fight came very close. The first negotiations fell apart. The second negotiations still came close, and it was taking a long time, and it almost faltered for a second time. But Errol Spence, obviously, from all accounts, from Crawford and Errol Spence, he gave in to some of Crawford's demands. He said he paid extra millions deducted from his purse, and he gave Crawford a coin flip and whatever else to get that fight across the line. This is all documented. So if Boots really wants to fight Brian Norman, and the difference is $500K, but you whooping Brian Norman and unifying to now be a 2-belt champion, and actually instead of an email champion, taking the belt from somebody, that would do wonders for Boots' career. So why doesn't Boots give up the $500K from his purse and apply it to Brian Norman? And then if that's what it took to get the deal done, do like Errol Spence, deduct the money from your purse, get the opportunity. People keep saying it's an opportunity for Brian Norman, like he's the only one that gains. He's the one taking the risk fighting on a rival promoter. So it sounds stupid. It's a risk for Boots, and it's a risk for Brian Norman, but the heavier risk and burden is on the Normans. So to leverage that, if your promoter can't get it done and you're very close and you truly want it, take the money from your purse. Say, I'll give you $750K from my purse. And then the fight gets over the line. Like Ryan Garcia is another, you can love him or hate him. Ryan Garcia is another person that we know in modern boxing that has forced his promoter to work in his best interest and do what he said. Because Golden Boy Oscar just did an interview with Club Shay Shay and Shannon Sharp, and Oscar said we didn't want Ryan to have a rehydration clause or catch weight or whatever, right? Namely the rehydration clause. Ryan said, I want to fight Tank. I don't care about it. I'm willing to accept these terms. And then the fight got made. We got the fight last year. He's like, I don't care about DAZN and this and stuff. And like there was also some give from Showtime. Showtime had to let DAZN offer the fight so you could buy the fight from their app as well. That's how you get a fight done. Little pull, little push, little give. Not going to social media and YouTube doing a bunch of interviews and a smear campaign when you really want to get a fight done and just a bunch of finger pointing. So to me, that's unserious business. And it shows me that it's not really even about making the fight. It's about showing and presenting to the audience that we tried and hoping the audience believes what they're hearing and starts picking sides and then almost settles for much lesser fight like the Karen fight, Karen Chukadasian, because of the excuse, hey, we tried for the bigger fights, but these guys just didn't want to fight Boots. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.